The naming of a Pokemon can make a huge difference onto whether that Pokemon becomes popular or not, and I think Game Freak have made a drastic mistake when naming 10 of their Pokemon, which I'm going to attempt to rename, but I'm going to explain as to why I think these Pokemon deserve a rebranding. In Scarlet and Violet, we came across a whole new branch of Pokemon which were the Paradox Pokemon. So we had 10 past Paradox Pokemon, like Koraidon, and we had 10 from the future. And these broke the normal naming conventions. Normally, a Pokemon like Bidoof has got their name, because that's what they say in the anime, and that's just a pun of some description. It's a beaver and it's a doofus. Doof. The fact that Bidoof has been raised to the elevation of God means that names make a big difference. Let's face it, who would have paid any attention to the little pig if it wasn't called Lechonk? The past Paradox Pokemon were all named after some sort of defining trait around them, which is kind of how language evolves. It makes sense that Great Tusk is named because it has great tusks. But the future Paradox Pokemon? They have been done incredibly dirty by Game Freak. Their names are awful. I cannot stand the fact that they went for the naming convention of naming them all Iron something. It's not as if this problem is just an issue in translation either. All of the future Paradox Pokemon are named as Tetsuno something, which translates to being of iron. Fans of My Hero Academia will remember Tetsu 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 Tetsu. So something like Iron Crown, for example, would be Tetsuno Kashira, which Kashira means leader or head, so the translation would be leader or head of iron. Steel-type Pokemon getting names which relate to metal in some way or other, and by the way, it should have been the metal type, not the steel type. It's not that unusual for them to get that included somehow. Steelix, Copperaja, Celesteela, and Goldengo are 4 of the more obvious ones. There are exceptions to this rule, of course. There are Pokemon who've had the steel type added to them at a later date, such as Alolan Sandshrew, or Diglett, or Galarian Meowth, being kind of obvious. But even Pokemon like Cufant gets a nod, because Cu is the elemental symbol for copper. But only 2 of the future Paradox Pokemon have the steel type, Iron Treads and Iron Crown, which means this is not a logical progression that we should be making. Instead, I think they should have used the same naming conventions that they used for the past Paradox Pokemon, because let's be honest, Winged King sounds significantly better than Iron Serpent. Here's what I would have named the 10 future Paradox Pokemon if we're using the lessons of the past. And yes, there is only, although there are technically 11, I'm not including Miraidon in this because Miraidon has a name, and the pun of Rhydon is there. It's a bike. It's there. It's fine. Let's start off with Iron Treads. I would call Iron Treads Rolling Quake. This is a nod to it being known as the Quaking Titan, and it being the counterpart to Great Tusk in the regular games as it goes through. A description on Bulbapedia reads, "In one arid corner of Paldea, there have been reports of a mysterious life form. It is said to resemble Donphan at a first glance, albeit one that can assume a spherical shape and roll into a swift, rolling attack." If that's not enough of a description to suggest that this should have been Rolling Quake, I don't know what is. It rolls, and it's the Quaking Titan. It makes sense to me. Next up is Iron Bundle, the future Paradox form of Delibird, and I have called this Pokemon Frigid Gift. This is more of a nod to Delibird being the sort of Father Christmas Pokemon and giving out presents, its signature move being present. Iron Bundle doesn't have a huge amount about it. It's described as being looking like a Delibird and having an apparatus which it fires big ice blasts from, which makes sense. It is a water ice type, but it doesn't really have much else going for it. It's described in the Violet Pokédex as only 2 have ever been seen, which isn't great. I think with this one, they kind of knew that Delibird isn't that popular. Moving on, we move to Iron Hands, the future Paradox form of Hariyama, who I have called Thunder Slap. This is a reference to it gaining the electric type upon becoming a Paradox Pokemon, and because, well, look at those hands. If it slapped you, you would know about it, and it would feel like you were being struck by thunder. In addition, its hands are able to move independently of the body, so it could just rocket those hands across you, slap you across the face, and get away pretty quickly. It's terrifying looking Pokemon. Next we move to Iron Jugulus, the Hydreigon future Paradox form, and this one I have called Soaring Shadow. This is to be a little bit of a counterpart to Roaring Moon, because Roaring Moon is a giant crescent moon that flies through the sky. From the darkness of night we move to the brightness of the sun in Iron Moth, who I have decided to call Impure Sun. This leans into the Volcarona description of it being worshipped as a sun deity, and the fact that Iron Moth now has the poison typing, which means that it has its own sun mythology around it in its shape, but it also will just poison you because it's terrible like that. A bit more down to earth now, we move into Iron Thorns. I would have called this Colossal Thorns, although I had a look at it and Iron Thorns is actually about a foot shorter than Tyranitar, which is kind of funny. So instead, we're going to go with Thorny Crag. I like the thorns as part of its description. It's still a rock type and it's pretty substantial, so Thorny Crag just kind of made sense to me. Now we move into the combined Pokemon of both Gallade and Gardevoir slammed together and pushing out to become Iron Valiant. This one takes the fighting and fairy types from its contemporary ancestors. So I have gone with Heroic Blade, giving it that divine sense of justice that comes from the fairy typing and the fighting prowess that comes from a Gallade. I just like its weapons. I always thought Iron Valiant was kind of dull as a name. It doesn't really speak about what its virtues are. It just is, it's valiant and it's made of metal. Boring. Then we come into the trio of Pokemon that released the Generation 5 Paradox forms of Iron Leaves, Iron Boulder, and Iron Crown, representing the Swords of Justice. For Iron Leaves, I would have gone with Forest Saber. Pokedex entries have described Iron Leaves going through using its shining blades to julienne large trees and boulders, and it's quite a terrifying Pokemon. If you're being used to cut through trees and boulders, it's pretty substantial, but I think Forest Saber makes sense for this. Its blades are kind of curved, and as it goes through, it does run through the forest quite well based on its Virizion ancestor. For Iron Boulder, I have called it Sarsen Rend. Sarsen is a troublesome stone, and it seems that Iron Boulder was a Terrakion that has been corrupted by some sort of evil organization. Think Team Rocket, but way in the future. Finally, we come to Iron Crown, who I have called Caprine Scythe. Caprine means goat-like, and since all of these Pokemon are ungulates of some description, it makes sense to describe this one as a goat. I mean, look at those horns. That is very goatish. If this was a future Paradox form of Go-Goat, I don't think anyone would have complained too much. What do you think of those names? Do you think they're better than what they've already got? Do you like the iron description of all these future Paradox Pokemon? Let me know in the comments below, and whilst you're there, hit the subscribe button, because it's cool to be able to talk to you about these things. I like making these Pokemon videos where I discuss these things, so until next time everyone, thanks, see you soon.